This video is going to show you how to make a paper template in Fusion 360 for a cylindrical tube like this one. First thing we want to do is come up into our Construct toolbar, and we'll select our Axis through Cylinder command. We'll select our tube and we'll hit OK. Next we'll come up to our Surface tab and we'll come down to our Create toolbar and select our Ruled command. If we zoom in on our part, we can see that there are these little perpendicular lines that are perpendicular to this outer face and inner face, and we want to select one of these. If we go to the other side of the tube, we'll see that it also has these same lines. Just select one of these lines, any which one you want. We'll select this one. Now we want to come over here and we want to select direction in our type, and then select in our direction and click on the axis that we just created. And now this little blue arrow, we want to drag it through the part so that it extends completely through. We'll hit OK. Next thing we want to do is come up into the Modified toolbar and select the Untrim command. We'll select our surface that we just created, and we'll type in a dimension. I'll set this to 0.1. We'll hit enter. And now we will come up into the Create toolbar and select the Thicken command. Click on our surface that we just extended or untrimmed, and we want to set a thickness, so I will set this to 0.0001, so 1/10. For our direction, we want this to be symmetric, and then the operation, we want this thickened surface to actually cut our part. So we'll click on cut and we'll hit OK. Now if we zoom in on our part, we'll see there's actually a little sliver missing from the section or the side of our tube. Okay. Next thing we want to do is come up into our sheet metal tab, go to our sheet metal rules, and we want to create a new rule. I've already got 2 rules for paper templates. You really only need one. They both do the same thing, but I'll show you how I created that. We'll just click on any one of these rules and do a new rule. We'll change this to paper template, and the only number we need to change is our K factor, and we'll set this to 1. We'll hit save, and one of these is our new rule that we just created. So close this out, and next thing we can do is go up to the Create toolbar, and we want to convert our tube into sheet metal. So we'll click on that, click on our tube, and then come down to our paper template rule that we just created. We'll hit OK and go back up to the Create toolbar and click on Create Flat Pattern. We'll select our tube, we'll hit OK. Now we have a flat pattern of our tube that we can create a paper template for. But first thing we need to do, since this is a little bit longer section of tube and this most likely won't fit onto a sheet of paper, we need to split it into 2 different templates. So we'll come up here to the Create toolbar and create a new sketch. We'll select our top face, and we want to draw 2 lines that are perpendicular to those outer edges. And then 3 more lines, actually just 2 more lines. And we want these to be hidden. Just construction lines. And these need to go from the coped area into those lines we just drew. And they need to be perpendicular. And we'll set these 2 lines to be equal to each other with our equal constraint. And then we also want these lines to be collinear with the yellow center line. Okay, now we need to set a distance between these 2 lines. This distance is going to vary depending on the length of your tube, but I normally like to leave a good section between the, I guess you could say, the part of the cope that's closest to the line, about the same diameter as the tube. So this is 2-inch tubing. I'm going to set this distance to 2 inches. Still a little bit short. Change this to 1.5 inches. Okay, that looks better. Okay, now that we have those 2 lines, we can finish our sketch. And we want to split. We'll come up here into our body or modify command, and we want to do a split body. And we'll select our flat pattern and then select those 2 perpendicular lines that we just created, and those are actually going to split the whole part into 3 different sections. Now that we have that, we want to come up into our toolbar up here, and we'll go down to drawing, and we want to click on from design. Oh, first it wants us to save, so I'll just do tube template, click on save, and then we want to set our sheet size to A size. This is probably the same size that you have, just a regular printer. So click on the second one so that it's in portrait mode, or landscape mode, sorry. And everything over here looks good. We'll hit OK. Put our part in the middle for now, and we want to set our scale to 1:1. We'll hit OK. Come up into our sheet settings and just turn off our title block and edge lines. Okay, now we can move this around, and it's not going to fit on the sheet completely, so I'll have to print this out in 2 different sections. So what you would do is just set the template you want in the center. And oh, one thing I forgot to mention is this dimension that you set between these 2 lines. Just remember that number, because when you lay these templates out on your tube, you're actually going to mark this line on the tube and then measure off of that to find the start line of your second template. So move this in the center, and we just want to do a file print, and then this screen's probably going to look different depending on your computer and your printer, and template's not exactly in the center, so we'll come up here and change that using our offset. Okay, that should be good. So after that, after you got this in a good printable area, make sure your scale is set 1:1, and then you'll just click on print, and then do the same thing for your other template. Get this centered up, and then print that out with a 1:1 scale. Okay, there we have it. We've got our 2 templates cut out and ready to go. So next thing we need to do is get a tube that is long enough to make our part, and we need to draw a straight line. Draw a straight line down the length of our tube. So a way that I like to do that is just getting a piece of angled material and then getting a piece of, or a Sharpie, and putting it on our material just like that, and just holding it by hand, and then taking the Sharpie, just running it down that one edge. So now, I don't know if you can see that, we've got a straight Sharpie line going down the middle of our tube. Make this a little bit longer so I go all the way to the end. Okay, so now what we want to do is take our paper template and see this little dash line. We want to line up that line with our Sharpie mark that we just made on our tube. Okay, and then we want to wrap our template around the tube, just like that. And we're just going to run a Sharpie along this edge or cope. I'm using thinner paper than I normally use. I like to use construction paper for this because it's a lot more sturdy. But we'll just use this for now for an example. Okay, now before you let go of that template, we need to make a little mark at the edge of our inner edge of our template. Just a little mark across our straight line. And then, like I said before, you want to remember that dimension that we had created to separate the templates. So I believe I had that set to 1.5 inches. So we will mark 1.5 inches from that line we just made. And that's going to be the start of our second template. So same thing, line that dashed line that goes through the center of your template with the straight line on your tube. And then this back edge needs to line up with that mark we just made. Okay, now I can wrap this one around. Do the same thing. Just mark out your edge. Okay, there we go. I don't know if you can see that, but we have our Sharpie line going around the tube on both ends. Okay, so now what you can do is just, take a grinder or even a plasma torch and just cut along this line until you've got your finished part, and then you can just make adjustments as you go if it doesn't fit properly, but this usually gets it pretty damn close. So there you go. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.